So nobody listens to the guy in the middle, and I think, well, you've had the relief, now it's time for the heavy part. And I'm going to ask you to answer 3 very explicit questions, but you know, when people don't react, I never know whether, you know, they're not voting or not interested. So this time, if the answer is yes, please wave, and I can see you, right? So yes, and if the answer is no, fold your arms. All right, let's practice. Yes, wave, no, great. Okay, so have you got children? Mm-hmm. Are you in a relationship? Not asking for myself, just asking, you know. Okay, and question 3, do you have friends? You know, like, yeah, okay then. So, when you talk to those people, when you talk to your children, you know, when you talk to your partners and friends, do you sometimes say things implicitly, hoping they will understand the message? Yeah. Still voting, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to show you 3 situations, 3 types of interactions, and 3 very implicit statements, and I would like you to think to yourself, you can share it with your partner, you know, this beautiful person sitting next to you, as to what you think the explicit content is, okay? So here is the first one. A mother talking to a child, or a father. What do you think the message is? I think it's something like this. Right? Have you ever said that to your kids, yeah? Okay, especially if it's like, you know, the 6th drawing in the last 10 seconds. Okay, here is the next one, you know, person, well, a woman talking to her partner. Yeah, breaking up. Okay, so here's what I thought it means. Yeah. Okay, and you know, finally, you know, the last one is a real example what I overheard, you know, just by accident, in a pub once. Have you ever felt that way? Yeah. So I think this is the message, okay? So implicity is a part of, you know, human life. Implicity is, you know, is so important everywhere. And I think, you know, my brief 15, 20 minutes, well, it's going to be important not only to your students and their Matura, but, you know, this may also save relationships and this may also save lives. But implicity is complicated because when you analyze implicity, you know, it's composed of many linguistic, so to speak, sub-phenomena or micro skills, because, you know, it's connected with intonation, with summary skills, which you've just practiced, you know, with understanding intention, dealing with a variety of semantic frames, etc., etc. If this isn't looking too complicated, sometimes, you know, those phenomena will overlap. Sometimes you'll have, like, you know, 3 or 4 or all of them, you know, in implicity. And I'd like you to read that quote, please. So my point is going to be that even though implicity is usually tested in passive competence tasks, like, you know, listening and reading, students who can use it actively in speaking and writing will be better able to spot it in passive competence tasks. Will you agree? This interesting piece of science. Thank you. I think we can move on. So I think, you know, if you can use intonation effectively, you'll be more able to spot it when, you know, people say something, yeah, oh, that's great, okay? All right, so when you have a task like this, you know, what is the speaker doing, right? Is the speaker giving information, describing, etc.? Of course, in Matura, at a high level, you can't really expect the speaker to say something like, okay, so now I'm giving advice. Or you can't expect the speaker to say, now I'm recommending things, okay? Because, you know, it's going to be like, you know, a variety of language functions, etc. How can you practice that with your students? Well, one of the simplest things I can do, and I do with my students, is that, you know, I give them like different slips of paper, and there'll be like, you know, different language functions on them, right? So it's like, you know, give advice about traveling, describe a place, but it must be specific, not just describe something, but describe a place, etc. And there's always like a multitude of those cards, and then, you know, everyone draws a card without telling anybody else, you know, what the function is. Now, what they have to do is they have to speak for 1 minute on that subject. It's active, right? So they have to speak for 1 minute, have to prepare that, of course, beforehand. Have to speak for 1 minute, and the partner or partners in the group, like, you know, 3 people, 4 people, will have to decide at the end, you know, what the speaker is doing. And now, of course, it happens a lot that, you know, they either get something wrong or the speaker wasn't communicative enough. In other words, the speaker was supposed to criticize a film, and, you know, what she did was describe a film. And then they can argue. The more they argue, the better, okay? Because the whole point is, you know, for them to have this, you know, beautiful learning moment, okay? What you can do as a follow-up or as a possible extension of that is that you can only focus, for example, on giving advice, and those cards may be like give advice about choosing a restaurant, give advice about traveling, give advice about this and that, etc. This way, you don't practice the language functions, you practice the semantic frames, okay? Or you can reverse it, and you can say that, you know, today we're practicing the functions, so the students can have cards with give information about the film, criticize the film, recommend the film. Everything is about the film, but the functions are different, all right? Now, when you have a task like this, with a question, what does the woman do and who is she speaking to? Of course, once again, in Matura, it's very unlikely that the woman, you know, in the recording, will explicitly say, I'm a scientist and I'm going to recommend things to you. Did you get that? I'm going to repeat that. Okay, not gonna happen. Okay, so what I do once again is the students have, you know, a variety of cards with language functions, but this time I also give them like the roles they will have to play. Would you be able to spot those roles? Obviously a gymnast, a young mother, this guy, a rock musician, and this one? One of the first Google images for middle-aged teacher. Okay. Anyway, this one is more time-consuming, but, you know, it's Matura, and we shouldn't be afraid of teaching. So what I do is I tell my students, now we have more time. I just have to write something like 100 words, a little script, in which, you know, you draw a card with a person, you draw a card with a function. So it takes a lot of processing, right? They have to think a lot. But as I think Dr. Cichmińska said, and I like that, thank you, you have to get into the minds of CKE to understand what they really want. And if you get inside their minds, then you'll be better able to deal with examination tasks. So students who can deal with those tasks, who can prepare those tasks for their peers, will be better able to deal with these in the exam, when the exam day comes, okay? So then they have like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you know, they write down 100 words, and they have to, again, present this little speech or present, you know, this piece to their peers in the group. And the others will have to decide, you know, first of all, who is speaking and identify the clues. Like, I know it's a young mother because you used words like this or that, right? And, you know, if you think about convincing someone that something is right, you know, you might have like different messages from the rock guitarist, from a young mother, etc., etc. So then, of course, once again, if your students work together and, you know, Krzyś tells Zosia, well, I couldn't make out who that was because there were not enough clues, it's also a message to Zosia that next time, perhaps, she should put more clues. And the idea is that, you know, they will be better able to see that in the exam. Okay, next thing is, think if we want our students to deal with implicity, we should allow them like to have opportunities for critical thinking and also abstract thinking. Have you ever heard of Ig Nobel Prizes? It's like the prizes, you know, awarded to scientists of various fields for doing useless, crazy research, okay? So why not? Well, you can use the same cards, okay? We have to economize on time, and well, you've got a few of the winners, okay? So in the last couple of years, the winners were scientists who found out or who did research on how to turn old ammunition into diamonds. There was a guy who invented a speed jammer, a device that lets your interlocutor know that they have been speaking for too long and it jams their voice. Don't practice that now. Okay, the effect of fabrics on love life. So is silk really that sexy? Unboiling an egg. Can you unboil an egg? So there was like a guy who did research on that, right? And there was, also research done into whether drunk people perceive themselves as more attractive, themselves, not other people. Okay. Finally, there was research proving, fact or opinion, that people who are night owls are psychopaths. Okay, so once again, you tell your students, okay, so you've got, the winners, you've got those people. Now, make a case for who would benefit from which, finding, which type of research the most. Try and prove that, okay? Finally, there's this moment when we have to deal with issues which are controversial. And very often, we tend to present our own point of view in the classroom, which is great because it's called education. But at the same time, I think when you choose a controversial topic, like, let's say, environmental issues, veganism, or something, this is something I actually tried myself. You play your students an extract from the film, for example, Cowspiracy, found on Netflix, no commercial here. And at the same time, you show them, or you give them like a script from an internet opinion forum presenting the opposite point of view. So not only do they have like both points of view, but you also tell them to analyze the language used both in the film and in the script, because you know that many times we present things in a very emotional way. Even facts may be presented with the employment of emotive language. And say, a figure of 90%, or you can say a staggering figure of 90%, okay? So then, your students work in groups, and it is challenging, it is time-consuming. They work in groups, and they identify the language used by the makers of the film, and also used by the people who commented on that film online, okay? And when you have to analyze someone's language, that's the moment when you become really good at spotting this, when it happens, okay? So my point here is that, even though implicity in Matura is tested in reading and listening, we have to teach our students to be able to use implicity. Because, it's a life-saving skill as well, okay? So interacting with such a fantastic audience has given me an experience that has been not only inspirational, but also forever to be remembered. Alas, due to various constraints, most of which are of temporal nature, I'm afraid that I will have to start closing. Nevertheless, I hope that our paths cross again in the days to come. On a final note, let me finish with a quote from none other than Barack Obama, and let me express my deep gratitude for addressing this convention.